Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Ramadan Mubarak. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the Healthy Muslim in Ramadan. We've been talking about the way we neglect ourselves and cause our own illness, but sometimes that's not true. Sometimes things are sent to us. And I've already given you many quotations from the Quran which indicates that Allah can send us anything, anytime. Given that we are at the mercy of His will, it's important to understand truly what the blessing is of these calamities. Because in what the material man would see as great loss, the spiritual person sees great benefit. In Quran it says, "No misfortune can happen on earth or in your souls, but is recorded in a decree before which we bring it into existence." Let me repeat this. No misfortune can happen on earth or in your souls, but is recorded in a decree before we bring it into existence. That is truly easy for God. In order that you may not despair over that which passes you by, or exult over that which is bestowed on you, for God does not love one who is proud and boasts. This implies, of course, that the trials are not necessarily misfortunes. They can be what we interpret as benefits. So God gives blessings through all of His trials, and some of His trials are perceived as gifts. So how do we react when something happens to us that is beyond our control? We go through life with a huge illusion, which is that we're in control. The anxiety of the person who gets up in the morning is to be safe, to care for his family, to check that everything is happening as it should happen. And we exert a lot of intelligence and a lot of detail and a lot of our time in making sure that the right things happen. And as I've already encouraged you, we use a great deal of intelligence to what we do to keep our bodies healthy, to keep our families safe. We put a lot of thought into all of that. And if we get a good result and we see everybody is healthy, everybody's well, we feel happy. And we get a sort of reflected glory. We think we're in control. And then one day, something else happens. It can be a car accident. It can be simply that you wake up and your legs won't work. It can be that you've gone blind. It can be that you discover you have a very aggressive form of leukemia. Anything. You've not caused these things. They've happened, our phrase is, out of left field. In other words, there was a part of your vision that is clouded. You could not see this coming. Allah knows it was coming. We didn't know it was coming. I love the story of Khidr in the Quran and the incomprehension of Moses as he watches Khidr dealing with certain situations, and poor Moses is lamely following, not comprehending at all what he sees as arbitrarily callous or irrelevant or stupid decisions on the part of Khidr. But of course Khidr could see the whole picture. Moses couldn't. And Allah gives us that story in the Quran to show that he sees from We really have a very narrow vision of what is going to happen in our lives. But how we look at these illnesses, these episodes, these misfortunes, we call them misfortunes. Our language, our English language, is rich with what our perceived understanding is of these events. But is that correct understanding? If you suddenly find that you are paralyzed, maybe you've had multiple sclerosis and this is an acute episode and you'll get better. Maybe you've had a spinal artery stroke and you won't get better. You don't know in that moment. You don't know over the next few days while the doctors scratch their heads and do tests and mumble a lot with long words that you don't understand. You're left in a position of doubt about what your future is, what the provision will be for your family. There are many consequences of this delicate balance you've achieved in your life where everything is going perfectly. And this thing has happened. How do people respond? This is my field. I'm a doctor. This happens to people who come to me, and they come to me with this problem. And they come with a range of reactions. Some of the reactions are fury, intense fury. How could this happen? You know, it's ridiculous. You know, I've got so much to do. You know, take this away from me. And if I don't achieve it, they blame me. And it's hard dealing with the anger because their perspective is they were running a great ship. Their life was terrific. This has interfered with it. It has to be taken away. They don't have any other perspective. In Quran, of course, we're told differently. In Surah Al-Baqarah, that chapter which is the core of our belief, give glad tidings to those who patiently persevere, those who say, when affected with calamity, to God we belong, to Him is our return. They are those on whom descend blessings from God and mercy, for they are rightly guided. So, we're clearly told then in Surah Al-Baqarah, the answer is acceptance. Not necessarily that you shouldn't go to doctors, because as we've already explained, if you have an illness, you go to the physician, and part of the decree is that the physician will make you better. And this was a temporary episode for you to make you wiser about your life and about the transience and fragility of what you take to be your right and the things that you rely on in your material life. So in the moment, you're not going to know the outcome of the illness. You merely know that you have been given a reminder that you're not in charge. Allah is in charge. And He knows what is going to happen to you. I repeat, no misfortune can happen on earth or in your souls, but is recorded in a decree before we bring it into existence. That is truly easy for God. So Allah sends us laughter and tears. There is never any laughing that is not followed by weeping. That is Ibn Sirin. Abdul Qadir said, disaster has not come in order to destroy you, but it has come only to examine your patience and your faith. And God gives you blessings through your trials. Abu Darda said, when God decrees anything, He wishes that you should be content with His decree. I went through this. It was very interesting when I got cancer. I had my life in order. Everything was going fine. I was in control, as they say. And then Of course, doctors make their own diagnosis, but I was correct. And my reaction was very strange, because I didn't feel angry at all. I didn't feel frightened. I'm a doctor. I kind of know what the treatment's going to be as soon as I make the diagnosis. So there's no fear, because information is key. It's very easy if you're fully informed. You're a lot calmer about these things. So I didn't have to feel frightened. I felt intrigued. I said to Allah, "Oh, this is interesting. What is it you want me to learn?" I also reminded him, I'm pretty stupid. I'm quite slow at learning things, and I'm quite blind. And you have to make it really obvious to me, because I may not otherwise learn the lesson of what it is you sent me. Inshallah, I think I learned a lot from it. One thing I did learn was to be careful who I spoke to. I had a radiotherapist, who I chose a woman radiotherapist, and I told her, she was very sweet to me. She said, "You must have felt so angry." I said, "I wasn't angry. I knew Allah intended this for me, and I merely have to understand what it is I have to learn from it." She looked utterly terrified and never spoke to me again. We have a lot to learn. Please come back. Welcome back. It is fascinating to see how humans respond to the disasters that befall them. And it's been a great privilege for me as a physician to go through this journey with my patients and to observe a very wide range of responses, from which I've learned a great deal. As I think you've understood already, as a doctor, I have learnt from my patients. I may give them a few medicines, but they give me their wisdom. And that is why being a physician is a deep privilege. But there are some people who are beyond extraordinary. One great hero of mine was an Ethiopian runner called Abebe Bikila. For those of you who are not sports fans, you may not know his name. He was in the National Guard of the Emperor, and he ran. He was allowed time for training, and he ran through the hills, and ran every day, many, many miles, and he was a marathon runner. He won 3 Olympic gold medals. In one of them, we have an extraordinary record in the called the Tokyo Olympiad. And the cameraman was Buddhist and sought to define the perfection of athletic performance from a different perspective. And when he was recording the marathon, he observed from the beginning everybody running, and there's bustling and hustling and so on. Then people get into a smooth rhythm of running, and you see different styles. Some people roll their shoulders, some people have their elbows close to their... Everybody's different. A metaphor for life. And then you saw people getting to the stations where they needed water, and the different patterns of how people accepted it. And the German grabbed it and drank it for himself and threw it away. And the Italian threw it all over himself. And the English stopped to say thank you. And through it all was one pair of feet that didn't stop. It just went thump, 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 thump. And then people started getting tired. And you could see the pace becoming uneven, with a widening pace, with uneven length of strides. The camera panned up into faces that were looking anguished. You could see the shoulders rolling with effort. You could see the pain of this phase of the marathon. And through it all, you saw one pair of feet going, dong, dong, dong. And the camera panned up into that face, and you saw peace. Peace. He ran into the stadium lengths ahead of anybody else and had gone through the tape, winning the marathon, before anybody else had even come into the stadium. In order to show respect for the other runners and not claim credit before they arrived, he lay on his back and did bicycle movements with his legs. I failed to mention, by the way, that he'd had an appendix operation 2 weeks before. Just a minor detail. He went back to Addis Ababa, and a few months later there was a car accident, and his neck was broken. He went to Stoke Mandeville, where he was tetraplegic initially, lying on his back on a ventilator, and then off the ventilator. And then he got slow return of some arm movements. And people came to him in astonishment and said, "How can it be? You were the greatest runner in the world, and now you can't even move." He said, "You don't understand. God gave me the talent for running, and in my running, I praised God. Now God has rewarded me by taking away from me the need to run, so I can look on his face directly." There's another great hero of mine, Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali was the greatest boxer in the world. That is his title at the Millennium celebrations. Not only the greatest boxer in the world, the greatest athlete ever. And the person who came number 2 said, "I am not fit to be the dust beneath your shoes." This was not just because he was a consummate athlete, which he was. It was also because of the clarity of his moral compass. He was conscripted to serve in the Vietnam War on behalf of the US government. He called the press, informed them of this, and when he was going to register to be a soldier, press were waiting. He turned up and he said, "I can't fight and kill the Vietnamese. What have they done to harm me? Why should I kill a man who is trying to earn food for his family by farming?" He knew that by doing this, he would be jailed, which he was. He was sent to prison for refusing to serve in the army. This took great moral clarity. Later on, after he had won his Olympic gold medal, he was refused entry into a cafe in the South because he was African American and blacks were not allowed in. He threw away the gold medal. He said, "I won this medal in service to the whole of my country, not just some of it. So the medal means nothing for me now." And yet, he developed a very severe form of Parkinson's disease, which has slowly deprived him of his ability to move. When asked, how is it that the greatest athlete ever now can barely move, he smiled slowly and said, "Everything has a meaning." These are people who have understood through that illness that it is not a disaster, it is not a misfortune, it is a greater fortune. But it's hard to know this. I had another patient. I was called actually to the service of a man with lung cancer. And he was very close to death. He had metastatic disease in his brain, in his bones, in his liver. He was severely anemic. And he was cursing, 4-letter words I will not repeat, calling physicians idiots with the expletive richly peppered into every sentence. He reminded us we were completely stupid. I suggested to the oncologist that there was one rather unusual chemotherapy he could try. None of us had any hope that it would work. I saw him 2 years later. He had been completely cured. But the drug he was given had caused him some numbness in his feet. He came to me cursing me because the drug I gave him had a side effect. Allah heals whom He wills. Why He chose that man to heal is not in my knowledge. Here I am like Moses in the presence of Hidr. I seriously do not understand how Allah loved that man so much, but he was given life. And he did not value what he was given, or at least he was still complaining that the physicians were useless. There was a Greek millionaire who came to me, lovely guy. He said, I am blessed. God has really, really blessed me. He said, I have a beautiful wife. All my businesses are successful. I have 2 amazing children. And life is simply, it couldn't be better. I'm so happy. And I did a checkup. He was healthy. Within 2 years, he had had a heart attack with severe consequences to his heart, and he was in chronic heart failure, finding it very difficult to move. His wife had an aggressive form of cancer and was in the process of having chemotherapy. One son had died in a car accident, and the daughter had had a nervous breakdown. He still had wealth, but the thing that the wealth had served, his family, had been splintered. Not by anything he had planned. He hadn't caused any of those things. He was bitter, because he had thought that in creating his wealth, in working hard in his businesses, that somehow his beautiful wife and his great children were the reward of his labors. And he couldn't see another dimension to what it was that was in front of him. These are examples of different ways of looking at calamity, at disaster. And what happens if ahead of the disaster you have not developed a philosophy of life, a religion, an understanding that nothing, but nothing that you think you own, you actually own. You don't. Everything is a transition. Everything is a gift. Everything is lightly in your hands. It's useful to remember that in the simplest of situations. I had a Hindu who came to me, he had a knee problem. To be examined, he'd taken his watch off. As he was dressing, I said, "Is that your watch?" He said, "It is with me." I thought his English wasn't very good. I said, "You mean it's yours?" He smiled and he said, "It is with me." He was teaching me a lesson. All of us need to learn it. Thank you for being with me today. Please come back, there's more. Assalamu alaikum.